Welcome back. I'm Ezra Levant. It's been 2 years since Richard Esch was struck by an SUV while biking with his two friends, one of whom died in the accident. And while he still reels from the emotional pain of losing his friend, Esch also has to deal with a civil lawsuit from the woman who hit them. You heard me right. The woman who was driving and hit the three boys, killing one, is now suing them for emotional trauma. Charlene Simon is claiming $1.35 million in damages for psychological suffering, including depression, anxiety, irritability, and post-traumatic stress. How's this even possible? Well, criminal lawyer Boris Patensky joins me to explain. Boris, great to have you on the show. Welcome.
We've had
thanks. It's nice to see you. We've had a few of your colleagues on the show,
yes.
Ed Perucci and Sonia Schickman, so I know we're going to the talent.
We're all coming here regularly.
Well, thank you. Now, this is an interesting case of a civil suit where the person who caused the death of a cyclist is suing. Let's break this down between the moral authority of doing this and the legal case for doing this. Are they different?
Absolutely. There's two critical issues to distinguish between. So the first part of this is we have to strip away whether this just smells bad or whether this sounds wrong to be pursuing a civil action against what is clearly a victim here. Having said that, the Simons may be victims of civil wrongdoing, and that's for a court to do. So they absolutely do have a valid claim to pursue if their versions of the facts of this incident are accurate. So when you strip away the moral issues, then it simply becomes no different than any other collision that we have on our roadways. If one of the users on the road is not driving their vehicle, whether it's a bicycle or whether it's a car, in an appropriate fashion, and that results in a collision and injuries to the other driver or other damages to the other driver, our law does allow for civil action to be pursued.
Now, there could be a counterclaim too, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The folks who were hit or their survivors, their family, their estate, could sue the driver. That's not happening in this case, is it?
Well, whether it happens or not, absolutely they can, because it happens regularly. There may be a two-vehicle collision when each side says the other one's to blame for the incident. So, and sometimes both sides are to blame, and there's what may be what they call a reduction in an award of damages based on your own negligence. So, in a situation where there's a civil suit, each party will allege certain facts, and this thing really will depend on what facts are established. If these boys were driving their vehicles in such a fashion to create a danger on the road, and there was an accident as a result, legally, not morally, but legally speaking, she may have a valid claim. And the fact that it just doesn't sound right or doesn't sound very nice is not a legal issue, it's a moral one. The other thing I just want to add is, notionally, we sue individual against individual, but really these are insurance companies that are involved. We have no realistic likelihood that these children are going to, or their families are going to have to pay any money to their pockets. If there's an award here, insurance companies will be involved, but there's still this apparent lack of fairness when you have somebody who dies and others who are injured in a car versus bicycle collision. It just seems wrong that you could sue, but when you strip away the emotions out of it, it actually does make some legal sense if the facts are as she alleges.
Now, $1.35 million for emotional distress, that sounds awfully high. I mean, if you kill someone, I mean, the civil damages for killing someone often aren't even that high.
No, and in Canada, it's quite common to have all sorts of high amounts that are set out in a statement of claim, which are then significantly lower when the dust settles and the damages are assessed. But it's not uncommon to see figures like that thrown around at an earlier stage when you're talking about statements of claim and pleadings. We'll see what the actual result might be, if it's even a successful result in terms of this type of case.
I take your point. I mean, it just feels tone deaf. I mean, as you said, it doesn't pass the smell test to hit someone, kill them. And now no charges were laid against her, which is interesting.
Well, that, in fact, I think that justifies, or at least gives credibility to her claim. Because if you change the facts very slightly, there's a certain amount of emotion that we extend towards the children because they were riding bicycles. Well, let's just change the facts slightly. Let's say they were 15-year-olds driving a car without a license, weaving all over the road. That car is struck by another vehicle and they die, or one of them dies. So we may not have the same moral repugnance in allowing the other driver, who technically did strike this vehicle, to pursue a civil action, but I think we'd have a lot less problem with it. And here, if they're operating bicycles, obviously it's not don't need a license for that. But if they're doing it in a fashion that endangers other users of the road, then there could be civil liability. And it's simply a matter of black and white civil law that we have in this province that applies to all users of the road.
There's a lot of sorrow here. It just seems throwing a bunch of lawyers in afterwards just compounds things. That's how it feels.
Well, it doesn't give lawyers who pursue these types of lawsuits a particularly rosy image. I accept that. But unfortunately, if this woman really was a victim herself of other people not using the roadway appropriately, and she has legitimately suffered damage, if that's true, then our law should entitle to her to compensation.
This is where a defense lawyer maybe would even hire a PI to see, is she faking it? Is she malingering? Did she really suffer the kind of trauma she said? Or is she out partying and dancing? I mean, this is, sometimes they hire PIs to see if you're faking, right?
Of course. No, on the question of damages, you have to establish that you've suffered a real loss, and whether or not those are truthful and whether those are established. Undoubtedly, PIs do get involved. They will investigate the truthfulness of certain claims, and sometimes there are big reveals. But having said that, at this stage, there's certainly no reason for me to doubt her damages are actually legitimate. The bigger question is whether or not she could establish liability on behalf of the cyclist, because she would have to prove that they were doing something that's contrary to the rules of the road. If you can't do that, you're not entitled to any damages because you haven't established the liability.
Boris, great to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Ezra.
For being here.